When Tim Allen's Hollywood Hills estate went up for sale, many expected it to be just another luxurious property owned by a well-known celebrity. People anticipated marble floors, sweeping views, designer furniture, and a glimpse into the glamorous life of a famous actor. But as real estate agents, prospective buyers, and contractors began to explore the estate more deeply, it became clear that this was not an ordinary Hollywood listing. What they found raised more than just curiosity, it stirred a sense of unease that grew with every new discovery. Behind the beautiful facade of this mansion, there was something strange, something off, something no one could quite explain. As time passed, what started as quiet whispers turned into troubling suspicions, and the more they looked into the estate, the more disturbing things became. The estate was located high above Los Angeles, nestled in the hills where many other celebrities had built their homes. From the outside, it appeared to be a stunning architectural creation, combining elements of mid-century modern style with natural, rustic touches that made it feel warm and welcoming. Large windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering breathtaking views of the city below. The interior was filled with high-end finishes, elegant wood paneling, and beautifully designed spaces that seemed to reflect Allen's taste and success. To anyone walking through the front door for the first time, it was a dream home. But something about it felt strange. Visitors often described an odd stillness inside the house, as if time had stopped. Some even said the air felt heavier in certain parts of the house, and not in a way that could be explained by architecture or design. There were moments when it felt like the house was hiding something. Even though the mansion was vast, with multiple wings and long, winding hallways, some areas didn't seem to fit with the rest. Doors that led to nowhere, rooms that weren't connected in any logical way, and sections of the house that were always off limits. One longtime housekeeper, who had worked there for over 10 years, admitted that she had never been allowed into certain rooms. Despite cleaning the rest of the house thoroughly, those doors remained locked and untouched. When she asked about them, she was told not to worry, that they were just storage. But she said the way people spoke about them made her uneasy, like they were deliberately avoiding something. She never tried to open those doors again. Real estate experts noticed something odd, too. The house had a strange history of renovations that were either delayed or quietly cancelled. Plans for additions to the house would be approved, but then altered or abandoned without explanation. The property records were vague, often inconsistent with the physical layout of the house. Some even believed that the land had its own mysterious past, with rumors of secret rooms and underground tunnels that went back decades before Allen owned it. These rumors only grew louder when the house was officially listed. As buyers walked through the property, they started pointing out inconsistencies. Some rooms seemed smaller than the blueprints indicated, while others didn't appear on any plan at all. A few had no visible way to get in or out. A contractor hired to do a basic inspection came out of the house visibly shaken. When asked what he had seen, he simply said something about the place didn't feel right and refused to say anything more. On paper, Tim Allen's estate was everything a buyer could want. It had space, elegance, and the kind of style only a celebrity could afford. But those who knew Allen personally described him as unusually secretive, especially about his home. Most celebrities are protective of their privacy, but with Allen, it seemed to go beyond that. Friends and colleagues said he had strict rules about who could visit and where they could go inside the house. Some areas were always closed off, and there were security measures in place that felt excessive even for someone famous. There were biometric scanners at multiple entry points, reinforced walls in parts of the house that didn't seem to need them, and surveillance cameras in places that made no sense, like inside closets or behind paintings. It wasn't just a secure home, it was a fortress. It gave the impression that Allen wasn't just keeping intruders out. He might have been keeping something else in. One part of the house that drew particular attention was the basement. On official records, it was described as a basic lower level used for storage and utilities. But when real estate agents walked through the house, they noticed that the square footage didn't quite match what was on paper. Something was off. A buyer's representative requested an underground scan to see if there were any structural issues or hidden foundation damage. But what the scan revealed wasn't a problem with the foundation. It showed a hollow space beneath the house that wasn't listed anywhere in the documents. Alan's team quickly dismissed it as a private storage area that didn't need to be included in the sale. But that explanation didn't sit well with everyone. What kind of storage space needed to be completely hidden, not just from the public, but from contractors and inspectors? One person who toured the house walked out in the middle of the showing, visibly shaken. When asked what had made them so uncomfortable, they just said they didn't want to know what was in that house. That kind of reaction wasn't typical, and it added to the growing sense of dread surrounding the estate. Even some of Alan's closest friends admitted that he never talked about the house. While other celebrities often showed off their homes in magazines or interviews, Alan remained silent. He didn't bring people over, and he never shared photos or stories about the house. It was as if it didn't exist in the public eye, which made the secrecy all the more suspicious. The garage, at first glance, seemed like a highlight of the property. Alan was known to be a car enthusiast, often talking about his love for classic cars and hot rods. The garage reflected that, with gleaming vehicles and spotless floors. But people who saw it up close noticed things that didn't add up. The space was much larger than what was listed in the records. Some areas didn't look like they were meant for storing or working on cars. There was a pit in the garage, a feature used by mechanics to inspect vehicles from underneath, but this one was deeper than necessary and built with strange materials that weren't typical for garages. One contractor raised concerns and asked to investigate further, but the request was suddenly denied by Alan's representatives. The investigation was halted without explanation. Even more unsettling were the things that were missing. Alan had once shown off certain cars in interviews and photos, but those vehicles were nowhere to be found in the garage. There were no records of them being sold, and no one knew where they had gone. In one corner of the garage, tucked behind some shelves, was a stack of old boxes marked with strange codes instead of labels. One assistant accidentally saw inside one of them and claimed to see VHS tapes, handwritten notes, and what looked like old, possibly classified documents. That only raised more questions. Why would a celebrity keep such sensitive material in a garage? And why hide it? Then came the panic room. Nearly every mansion has a safe room for emergencies, but this one was different. At first, no one even knew it existed. It wasn't listed in the property details, and it wasn't visible in any of the floor plans. But an architect reviewing the structure noticed something odd, a space in the house that didn't seem to serve any purpose, yet was clearly there based on the layout. Using scans and old permits, they realized there was a room that had no door, no windows, and no clear way to access it. When this was brought to Alan's team, they refused to comment. Shortly afterward, a team arrived to assess the area, but by then, the room had been sealed off. Walls had been added, doorways removed, and any sign of the room's existence erased. One agent, who had seen earlier blueprints, said they were certain there had been something there. Now, it was gone. The last clue came from an old filing cabinet in a corner of the study. At first, it didn't seem important. But when someone tried to open it, they found it wasn't just locked, it was protected by a biometric security system. That level of protection is rare, usually reserved for government facilities or high-security labs, not a personal home. When buyers asked to open the cabinet as part of the inventory, Alan's team refused. They wouldn't provide access, and they said it was off-limits. That decision raised serious concerns. What was inside the cabinet that needed that kind of security? People who had worked at the estate over the years spoke of sealed envelopes, old videotapes, and documents that no one was allowed to touch. Some believed they held personal secrets, while others suspected something darker. As the sale dragged on, curiosity turned to suspicion. Then came fear. People involved with the listing started to back away. Contractors refused to return. Agents stopped offering tours. The more people learned, the less they wanted to be involved. Something was wrong inside that house, something no one could explain. And whatever it was, Tim Allen had gone to great lengths to keep it hidden. Whether it was a forgotten part of the past, a mistake that had been buried, or a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth, the mystery of the Hollywood Hills estate left behind more questions than answers. One thing was certain. What they found behind the walls of Tim Allen's home wasn't just strange. It was deeply disturbing. When the estate was first opened for inspection, everything appeared ordinary. The house had sat quietly for years, untouched and seemingly forgotten, yet beneath its surface, whispers began to stir. Rumors emerged suggesting that Tim Allen had kept detailed records of his life, meticulously organized files about things he had seen, secret meetings he had attended, and interactions that perhaps no one was ever supposed to know about. These weren't ordinary records. People speculated that they contained everything from behind-the-scenes Hollywood studio negotiations to personal feuds that had never been made public. More chilling still, some believed these files held damaging information, secrets that could ruin careers, end friendships, and possibly shake the very foundation of the entertainment industry if ever exposed. For a long time, nobody dared speak too loudly about it. It was all just hearsay. But that changed when someone who had once worked in the estate came forward, anonymously. The former worker confessed to having seen the filing cabinet years before it was locked away in a part of the house no one could access anymore. The cabinet had looked ordinary on the outside, but what was inside made it unforgettable. According to the worker, the top drawer was filled with folders labeled with dates and names, people he recognized, celebrities, producers, and high-level executives. The lower drawers, however, were stranger. They held rows of small, unmarked tapes. These tapes didn't seem like they were for professional projects, they were personal. Recordings of conversations that weren't supposed to be recorded. What truly haunted him, though, was something he found at the bottom of the cabinet, buried beneath stacks of old paper and documents. He had moved some of them aside out of curiosity, and that's when he saw it. A single photograph. It was not of Tim Allen, nor was it of anyone publicly associated with him. The face in the photo was pale, the eyes wide open, staring directly into the camera, and their expression frozen as if they'd been caught in the middle of something terrible. He said he would never forget that face, but he didn't know who it belonged to. What made it worse was the realization that whoever had taken the photo had done so without permission. The way it was placed, hidden so deeply, meant someone had wanted it buried. After that incident, the worker said the filing cabinet was quickly moved. Allen had it relocated to another part of the estate, and from that day on, no one was allowed near it. Eventually, when the estate was put up for sale, the cabinet was removed entirely before any potential buyers came to visit. But by then, the whispers had turned into speculation. People started wondering what had really been inside that filing cabinet. What secrets was Allen protecting? And what could possibly be so dangerous that he felt the need to remove all traces of it from the house? Things only became more suspicious when another former associate stepped forward, recounting a different but equally unsettling incident involving surveillance footage. Tim Allen's Hollywood Hills estate had a high-end security system. Every entrance, every hallway, and every critical area of the property was monitored. Most celebrities have systems like this. It's for peace of mind, to prevent theft, stalkers, or intrusions. But Allen had gone beyond that. He watched the footage obsessively, often reviewing it late at night by himself. He'd sit in his study for hours, eyes glued to the screen, sometimes with a look of unease that no one could explain. One night, this associate visited the house and found Allen in a state of visible distress. He had been watching something on the surveillance system, but when questioned about it, he shut the laptop immediately, locked the office door behind him, and refused to speak. The next day, something even stranger happened. Allen ordered a complete wipe of the entire surveillance system. Every recording, every backup file, every trace of footage was deleted. The company managing the system confirmed it hadn't been a malfunction or a software glitch. It had been deliberate. Someone, most likely Allen himself, had performed a total system reset that left no recoverable data. Not a single frame of footage remained. People who heard this story were left with one overwhelming question. What did Allen see that night? Was it a trespasser? Someone breaking in? If that were the case, why delete the footage? Why not use it as evidence? Others speculated that it wasn't an outsider at all but someone from within, perhaps someone entering the sealed panic room, or engaging in something deeply personal or disturbing. The idea that he had deleted everything suggested that whatever he had seen was something he never wanted to face again. The panic room had long been a subject of curiosity, even before all this came to light. At first glance, it seemed like a regular security measure, something a celebrity of Alan's stature would install just in case. But over time, details began to emerge suggesting the panic room served a different, darker purpose. A contractor, hired years ago to perform minor repairs inside the estate, revealed a strange experience he'd had while working inside the room. He had been tasked with checking the panic room's structural integrity and updating its systems. While inspecting the interior walls, he discovered something odd: symbols etched into the walls, faint but deliberate. They weren't decorative, nor did they match any design or architectural patterns. They looked like a kind of code, maybe even a language, although he didn't recognize it. Curious, he brought it up with Alan, who simply dismissed the markings as part of the room's security features. But something about that didn't feel right. The next day, when the contractor returned to the room, the symbols had been covered up. A fresh layer of paint or plaster had been applied with remarkable precision, as though someone had gone to great lengths to hide them. It felt intentional, and it unnerved him enough that he never mentioned it again until now. Rumors about the panic room only grew. Some believed it was used to store Alan's most valuable possessions, things too sensitive or too dangerous to keep anywhere else. Others thought it was a place he used when he felt threatened, not by intruders but by the secrets he carried. As the estate's final inspection took place before the sale, investigators were granted access to the room. What they found changed everything. Behind a false wall, hidden so cleverly it had escaped detection for years, was a small compartment. Inside were manila folders, sealed envelopes, and handwritten notes, some in Alan's handwriting, others compiled by someone else. The contents were vague but deeply unsettling. Among them was a letter, heavily redacted and stamped classified. Do not distribute. When decoded, the letter referenced a financial transaction gone wrong, something that had the potential to expose Alan and destroy his reputation. It hinted at dealings that went beyond ordinary business and into more ominous territory. The panic room, it seemed, wasn't just a safe space. It was a vault for Alan's most dangerous secrets. Whatever was in those folders had been worth hiding, worth protecting, and perhaps worth ruining lives over. But even that wasn't the end of it. As investigators and former associates tried to piece everything together, a pattern began to emerge, one that involved real people who had once been very close to Alan. Several individuals who had played major roles in his life had simply vanished from the public eye. These weren't just fleeting acquaintances. They were longtime assistants, publicists, and confidants. People who had once been visible parts of his career were now gone without a trace. One such person was James Blackwell, Alan's personal assistant for almost 10 years. He had managed Alan's schedule, arranged his interviews, and had intimate knowledge of his personal and professional life. Then, after a sudden fallout, James disappeared. His social media accounts were shut down, his contact information was gone, and no one in the entertainment community seemed to know where he had gone. One former insider admitted that James had been more than just an assistant, he was a trusted confidant. And the way he disappeared didn't feel natural. It felt like someone had erased him. Then there was Claire Reynolds, a skilled public relations expert who had helped Alan navigate the spotlight during the height of his fame. She had worked behind the scenes, cleaning up public scandals and shaping his image. But after an unpublicized dispute, she too vanished. A former colleague said Claire had taken time off to deal with personal issues, but they suspected something more was at play. They revealed that Claire had been involved in matters she no longer felt comfortable with, things she didn't want to be part of anymore. When she left, she didn't just change careers. She cut off all ties, disappeared from media circles, and was never seen in connection with Alan again. It led to a disturbing question: had these people been silenced? Had they gotten too close to truths Alan had spent years burying? Was there a connection between their disappearance and the contents of that hidden compartment in the panic room? The fear grew that the secrets weren't just about financial missteps or studio drama, but something far more serious. As each piece of the puzzle was laid out, a hidden narrative started to form, a side of Tim Allen that the public never saw, one marked by control, secrecy, and perhaps even fear. Whatever the truth may be, it seems clear that the estate was more than a home. It was a fortress, not just against the outside world, but against the past, against truths too dark to be known. The people who came too close to those truths seemed to fade away, as though they'd been written out of the story completely. Whether by choice, threat, or force remains unclear. But one thing is certain, the deeper you look into Tim Allen's estate, the more you begin to wonder if we ever really knew the man behind the Hollywood smile. And the scariest part? We may never find out what was real and what was meant to stay buried forever.